Mr. Vandrewala, Mr. Krishnamurthy, and friends. At the outset, it's a hard act to follow when one has to deliver a speech after the high poetry that Mr. Vandrewala had delivered here. And after that, as you all know, Mr. Deepak Parekh's speech, which was delivered by Mr. Krishnamurthy. Both of them are stalwarts, and certainly I would not be so immodest as to claim that my knowledge of the reality sector is anywhere near as expansive as either of these two people. So I will essentially stick to my domain, which is that of the government perspective, because that is where I think I will probably be able to share some information which you in the industry may not already know, or at least I hope you don't know. There were two statements which I thought, I would go back to, and one was Mr. Vandrewala's statement that, when he was in Tata Tele, he felt like he was driving a Ferrari, and now he's not so sure what exactly he's driving. But looking at the travails of the telecom sector and reading that in juxtaposition with Mr. Krishnamurthy, who said that real estate, more than any other industry, it's been the most sought after investment vehicle in India. So reading that, I don't think one can say that of the telecom sector at the current moment. So I think perhaps, it's a case of some of the roads looking a little different at this point in time. Hopefully the ferment in the telecom sector will also settle down. And I'm assuming the reason why Mr. Vandrewala said that the roadmap for the real estate sector is not very clear is probably because we are at the cusp of a transitional stage. I mean, if we look at the whole urban form in India, it's really undergoing a dramatic change. In fact, if we look at the census figures of 2001 and 2011, which I'm sure all of you would have sort of had a chance to look at, we have added something like 4,700 new urban settlements. They are called statutory towns because in India, they are still not recognized as formal urban administrative units of local self-government. But there is no decrying the fact that these are certainly pointing to an unprecedented urbanization. And I think both the speakers before me did say that the scale on which this transformation is happening, obviously the only other country in the world where this is going on is China. One advantage that India has compared to China, and particularly in the real estate sector, is that China has really been very wary of overheating in the real estate segment. And in fact, it's one of the sectors where the President and the Prime Minister of China actually monitor almost on a daily basis, because like the West, a runaway real estate sector could throw up unpleasant surprises for China's growth story. I think we, on the other hand, in India, as Mr. Deepak Parekh had said in his speech, I think because our regulators have been extremely conservative about the growth of this sector, we have been able to avoid that kind of an overheating in a macroeconomic sense. There might be local areas of overheating, but I think the fundamentals are extremely bright for the real estate industry as a whole. One, as we said, because of the fact that the big urbanization is still ahead of us. As we all know, India has been slow to urbanize. If you look at India versus, let's say, a country like Brazil, we're certainly way below in terms of urbanization. But urbanization is now beginning to gather a critical, I mean, it is reaching a tipping point. And we do expect that in the next 2 to 3 decades, there will be this kind of movement of 300 million people from the rural areas. So certainly demand, domestic demand is going to be a huge growth driver for the real estate industry. And because we have such a huge infrastructure deficit, clearly this is not so much a challenge as an opportunity. You know, 40 lakh crores or $1 trillion having to be spent on infrastructure in the coming 2 decades to bring our infrastructure up to scratch means that there's going to be a huge fueling of the whole real estate industry and the construction industry. And this cuts across all segments, commercial infrastructure, whether it's markets, whether it's malls, retail malls, whether it is social infrastructure, hospitals, schools, whether it is housing. The housing deficit in India, of course, which I'm a little more familiar, is a huge deficit. So clearly, as I said, even though there may be local areas of overheating and local segments where there is some overheating, the long-term growth prospects of the real estate industry in India certainly look very good at this point in time. Some of you may have read, or many of you would have been sort of watching Mr. Ruchir Sharma being interviewed on TV, speaking about, is India going to be a breakout nation and all that. So I just wanted to refer to one aspect that he mentioned, and I think some magazine recently had carried this, is the greedy South being or in danger of being overtaken by the North. So, and I think in Mr. Deepak Parekh's address also there was some mention of this, that there was a certain phase when in the South there was a certain investment and overcrowding. So hopefully that is a temporary phenomenon, and the South will continue to will get back on track. Overall, if we look at the prospects of the real estate industry, while it's bullish everywhere, I think in the South there should be good reason to be particularly bullish, because certainly the South is leading urbanization. Whether it's Tamil Nadu, Kerala, which are some of the most advanced or most urbanized states. Similarly, whether we look at a new breed of professional players who are coming into the residential real estate development, there are a very large number of professional players who are getting into this, and in fact they're leading some of the initiatives, particularly in areas like affordable housing. The growth of 2-tier and 3-tier towns, because that is where the big growth story is expected to happen in India. There, again, if you look at North India, and I think, my secretary, particularly Secretary Housing, always wonders, between Delhi and Calcutta, why is it that there are so few big cities? I mean, it's almost like there aren't too many. Whereas the South, I think, is in a much better situation, because whether it's Andhra or Tamil Nadu or Kerala, Karnataka is a little bit of an exception, where most of the growth is centered in the metro of Bangalore. But at least the other 3 southern states, the growth is much, much better distributed. And therefore, there should be the growth of 2-tier and 3-tier towns will throw up enough opportunities. The other big growth driver that is expected is that, we are seeing a lot of new technologies coming in, technologies which are making it possible to construct much faster, and hopefully, as both Mr. Deepak Parekh and Mr. Vandrewala mentioned, the need to conserve and make it more sustainable, because whether it's energy consumption or whether it's building material consumption, we do need to bring in more energy efficient, more sustainable technologies. And there again, I think the South is not badly placed. So certainly if we look at natural growth drivers that are already there, whether it's the big macroeconomic fundamentals or whether it's the more local factors. As I say this, I'm aware that the real estate industry, more than many other industries, like for example, if we compare with the IT industry is far more affected by, the global economic scenario, because when America and Europe, the demand is going down, certainly it's bound to have an impact here. But the real estate sector is something that is much more closely impacted by local outlooks and local environment. And that is also perhaps one reason why the real estate industry has been far more insulated than other industries by the entire global economic sort of meltdown. So certainly the long-term growth prospects, the medium-term growth prospects, and the basic fundamentals are, certainly very good for the South, for real estate industry in the South. I want to spend a few minutes on what are the key areas which government is working on, because when I started speaking, I said I would, like to spend a little more time on what are the big ticket government initiatives and what is the roadmap looking like for the real estate industry. And I think Mr. Vandrewala mentioned several points. I'm happy to mention here that all these are very much on the policy agenda. So I'll just try and give you a flavor of where we are now. And what implications it might have for you. The foremost in this is the Real Estate Regulatory Bill. The Real Estate Regulatory Bill, there has been a lot of apprehension expressed by some corners of industry, but I think this has been allayed to a large extent because we've been having repeated interactions from the ministry with the real estate industry. A large number of concerns have been taken on board. See, the primary feature of the Real Estate Regulatory Bill is to address the information asymmetry. It basically mandates certain public disclosure norms. And I don't think serious players of the industry should have any problem with that. Because it will actually establish a level playing field. It will put the industry on a much more credible footing once the bill is passed. And it will also bring in a lot of balance between the consumer and the real estate developer. So I think it is going to be a positive feature bill that will which will enable or facilitate faster growth of the industry. I am not saying that it may not have initial teething problems, because as we all know, even when the market regulator SEBI was first brought in, it took quite a bit of time for the market regulator to stabilize and evolve mature processes. Clearly, I think that will also be required here, but definitely it will be able to distinguish between some of the less happy practices of the industry and bring the bulk of the industry into an orderly, regulated, more professional framework. The bill is, Mr. Vandrewala, before we just came in, was asking me what is the time frame for the bill. The bill has, almost completed taking on board all the views of the stakeholders, and it's expected to come up before the Union Cabinet very shortly. And after that, of course, it will go to the Parliament and the Standing Committee, where they will take, where obviously the industry's inputs will also be taken. The government is looking at getting this passed in the next session, but of course, once it goes to Parliament, then one doesn't really know. The second area of concern that was flagged was the current delays in the approval processes, which is, sort of adding hugely to the costs. So this is now on the central government's agenda, and a committee has been constituted. And the committee has been given this mandate of coming up with a mechanism, which obviously the mechanism itself cannot be set up by the central government, because as all of you are aware, the clearances, 90% of the clearances are given by the state government agencies, except for the environment clearance, the airport authority clearance, etc. Those agencies are also being brought into the ambit of the mechanism. So hopefully we should be able to, the government is looking at this as the first step, So as important as the regulatory bill, the government's agenda is very clear that we would like to push through this mechanism at the earliest. The third thing that was mentioned was about the need for encouraging a rental market and the need to, sort of change some of the absolutely archaic laws, including the rental acts that we have. Already the draft new rental act, the bill has been circulated to the states, where it's a very, very simple, industry-friendly, market-friendly act. And we're saying that it's a contractual issue to be decided between the landlord and the tenant, and with very simple, fast-track dispute resolution measures. So hopefully that over the next coming 6 months to 1 year, we are expecting to get all the feedback from the states. And after that, we hope that the states, once the final draft act is ready, we hope that they will adopt the act in their respective states. Certainly this is one of the mandatory reforms under JNNURM, so states will have to do this. Now, land availability and the Land Acquisition Act is again a major source of concern, and government is also looking at this very seriously. Many states have started looking at more innovative and more market-friendly means of aggregating land and pooling land. I think Andhra Pradesh has taken a lead. The state of Gujarat already has a model, but many other states are being advocated to adopt the same models, so that they don't have to get into a litigious process of land acquisition, but can actually do land pooling and reservation of land even at the master plan zoning stage. Also, you will be aware that Mr. Kamal Nath, the Minister for Urban Development, has been on a focused campaign for revisiting the densification patterns that are already there, because with the kind of low FSIs, the kind of completely irrational FSI standards that we have in many, many cities, including Mumbai, I think there is also a lot of discussion between the World Bank, the Planning Commission, and the Ministry of Urban Development and HOOPA to see how this has to be rationalized and made, bring in a new regime where we will be able to have much more compact cities which can then be serviced. Of course, this is a long-term effort. I'm not saying that this is something that's going to happen in 6 months or a year, But clearly it will happen over the coming 2 to 3 years. Also, land monetization, government is looking at land monetization, particularly if you look at the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor, for example, the way it is structured and conceptualized. The plan is that, as you build the high-speed corridors and as you provide for residential and industrial land use, they will also open up the land on either side and monetize it so that we will be able to pay for the cost of infrastructure development. The government is also, working on the new JNNURM. As you know, the JNNURM phase 1, which ran for 7 years, has just got over, and there is a lot of discussion underway as we plan what should be the shape of JNNURM 2 and what should be the kind of urban and housing reform that we want as part of this restructuring exercise. So I think certainly any of these moves individually itself, I think, would be impactful enough. But taken together as a package, along with some of the more positive, fiscal changes that have been brought in, for example, ECB being opened up for affordable housing, other tax concessions that are being given, the new SEZ policy that's on the anvil, which is going to allow, greater scope for, non-industrial use where it can be used for housing and other social infrastructure creation. I think this entire package taken together, certainly we will see a huge momentum in the real estate, growth and development in the coming years. And I'm sure that this, would augur well for the industry. So with these few words, let me just go back to this last point that Mr. Vandrewala mentioned, just before he delivered that very nice poem. And he spoke about resilience, how resilience is, one of the key requirements. And I think certainly, and he defined resilience as accepting reality, believing that there is meaning, and constantly innovating. And I'm sure the South certainly leads in all three. Thank you very much.